Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Move and Bloom, a safe space where together we can grow possibilities. I'm super excited to be here this morning with Alex Toenniges. She's a Guild certified Feldenkrais practitioner and a bassoonist. We got her master's in music performance at Ball State, for those of you who are local. She's also a nature connection mentor, and Alex was actually my first introduction to table lessons. So I'm super excited to have her here today to talk about her adventures as a musician, her development as a somatics practitioner, and all the new cool stuff she's doing that I can't wait to hear about. So welcome, Alex. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Anna Maria. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. You want to start by telling people about um, your road as a musician?
Yeah. So I guess I started playing bassoon when I was 9. And before that, my mom started teaching me piano when I was little. And yeah, I think the what I've realized recently is that music was, I think, the tool available to me when I was young to have a sense of creativity and self-expression, and that was huge for me when I was young. And yeah, went on to get my bachelor's and my master's in bassoon, and then along the way I discovered Feldenkrais.
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I discovered Feldenkrais at the Bayview Music Festival, which is a chamber music festival in northern Michigan. And they offered a Feldenkrais class there, and I started taking it. And I remember my first teacher telling me, you could be a Feldenkrais practitioner. And I thought to myself, well, that's nice. Like, I'm flattered. But I'm going to be a musician.
Yeah, yeah.
And I found out there was another friend at the music festival who also went to Arizona State, where I went to college. And we discovered that there was a Feldenkrais class there at our university. So I started taking that, and just the more I did it, the more I got into it. And it was one of those things I was kind of taking just as an elective, kind of to help my music playing. But there was something about it where the more I did it, the more I was like, I need to keep doing this. And
Yeah. So let me back up a bit because
yeah,
your story is really inspirational, which is why I'm so happy to have you here. And a lot of people who are watching might be just about the mechanics. So I'm curious if, as you were discovering Feldenkrais, that influenced your playing at all as a musician.
yeah, I think my bassoon playing was one of the later things to change
Mhm.
because being a musician was so essential to my identity and so ingrained in my habits,
Right.
that, like, for me, it was easy to change the way I walk or the way I
Right.
do something else. But, like, breathing lessons when I first started were really hard for me
Mm,
because it's like my self identity was so wrapped around being able to breathe well.
right.
Um, so
And since
leaving that
9 years
space,
old.
yeah. So leaving that space to, like, try it a different way or maybe not be so good at it, right? Like, you
Mhm.
have to be willing to make mistakes and play around with it and let it be a little bit messy and not perfect.
That's a big risk, right?
Yeah.
It's really vulnerable.
Yeah, and especially in music, even once I started the training program when I was in grad school, you know, like, I had rehearsals and lessons almost every day. So
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of room to um, have that kind of privacy and room for exploration, at least in my
Right.
experience.
Right. But it did have major effects on you as a person globally.
Yeah, I think the first changes I started to notice were just that, like, I felt okay. I think I grew up in this world that was very achievement focused,
Mm-hmm.
and classical music is very demanding and very perfectionistic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got really good at always noticing what needs to be better and what needs to be improved. And that's a great skill to have. And it's not always the best way to be like a happy person. And I was also pretty anxious just in my relationship with school.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first things I started to notice were just I started to feel better just as a person. Like I started to feel more calm and like okay with things and less stressed about school.
Nice.
And my relationship started improving
Mm-hmm.
dramatically because I was able to sense myself.
So what did you notice changing that made you say, oh, my relationships are getting better?
Yeah, I started to notice that when I was in conversations with people, first of all, I could feel myself and I had a sense of like rather than just going along with what people expected um,
Mm-hmm.
or what was asked of me, I had a felt sense of like, what do I need?
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I was able to ask for that or to say no to things,
Right.
um, which is huge. Like you
Yeah.
can't know what you like and dislike without feeling yourself.
Right. That's interesting because you and I have talked about it before, but before I came to somatics, I trained in um, Ross Green's, gosh, I can't come up with a word for it now. Now it's collaborative and proactive solutions. And it's how to interact through conversation, but a lot of it is forming those distinctions, right? Like figuring out what your concerns really are, what your needs really are. And so many of us, and I include myself, sometimes I have to stop myself, don't have a really clear sense of what we want or need in any given moment. And that felt sense is a really great clue.
Yeah, it was huge. And I think, yeah, also in music, we get so focused on the product and how it
Right.
sounds that to shift my thinking to how do I feel,
Mhm.
um, that was a big life change for me. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that kind of led me away from music a little bit, was I started realizing in grad school, like I'm really burnt out and I was starting to
Mhm.
injure myself and have other
Oh.
kinds of problems. And it's like, I think my body's telling me that this is too much.
Mhm.
Um, and so since then, I've kind of started to explore a new relationship to music that's not um, all consuming, I guess.
Yeah. And what does your body say about that?
It likes it a lot more. It feels a lot more balanced and whole.
Yeah. Yeah. And how has that changed? Because you mentioned that since you were 9, music has been part of your creative identity, your creative expression. How has that new approach to your music changed how you relate as a creative being to the world?
Mm. Yeah. So in Feldenkrais, we talk about the self image of like how we
Mhm.
see ourselves.
Yeah.
And it feels like my self image has gotten so much bigger. Um, I think, and I remember saying when I was finishing grad school and decided not to go on and get a doctorate that I wanted to discover who I was without my bassoon.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I think my self image, my self identity had been pretty narrow, and it's provided a lot more room to open up and do lots of different things and be good at lots of different things and be interested in lots of different things. And also just to be like a whole person, to just be a person and not have to have a thing.
Yes, yes. And I'm going to rewind the tape because you said in grad school it was that you started to shift from one goal of getting a doctorate to perhaps something else. And it was during grad school that you decided to pursue your Feldenkrais training, right?
Yeah, I started my training just a few months into grad school.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. It was a tricky thing for me, as I'm sure it is for many people, because the schedule for the Feldenkrais training is a little bit unusual in that I think most trainings are like 2-week segments at a time. And so that just wasn't going to work with school. Like I couldn't take 2 weeks off at a time. And so I had kind of put that on the back burner. I started looking at training programs my senior year of undergrad and didn't really have a good option. And then the fall of my first year of grad school, I saw that there was a training program with weekend formats. So they were Friday through Monday segments. And I said, that I can do. Like I can miss 2 days of school. And and yeah, so I started while I was in grad school. I went to New York City 7 times a year for 4 years. Yeah, for Feldenkrais training.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious if there was a moment where, like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to pursue certification. And you said that happened in your undergrad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think originally, like I was saying, it was just kind of for me. Like I have to keep doing this.
Okay.
And also I knew that once I went to graduate school, there wasn't going to be a Feldenkrais class for me to take, so I wasn't going to be as involved in it as I was before. And it was very much slowly along the way that I kind of shifted my orientation more from music to Feldenkrais. And I was always kind of planning on combining the two, and I still do. I love to work with musicians, and I still play music with COVID. It's been a little weird, but yeah, it was a gradual shift.
It's a gradual shift. It's interesting to me because now that I've been through a training myself, I realize that most of us come in with a personal story, right? We had this amazing transformation and think, I need more.
Yeah.
I can't just leave this. But for a lot of us, there's also a moment where we say, and wow, this could help so many people. I want to share this with as many people as possible. And it sounds like you've worked with musicians. How has that gone?
I really love it. I've been teaching some workshops with the University of Michigan lately,
Mm-hmm.
their School of Music, Theater, and Dance. And I've also done workshops at Indiana University and Hope College and Grand Valley and Ball State. And, recently I've been really surprised by how much the students are already aware of some of these ideas. University of Michigan has a class on, it's called Wellness for the Performing Artist. And yeah, so many of the students were already, and I don't know if it was just the students in that class or the school as a whole, but they were already on board with so many of these ideas that was totally different from, even a few years ago when I was in school.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a huge thing. So many musicians get injured and don't like mental health is a huge problem.
Yes. Wow. That's amazing. And so, what differences did you see between groups then, like people who are already familiar with the ideas versus not? How does that change your teaching, the student experience?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like when students are totally new to it, I'm more focusing on these ideas of just introducing them to the idea of what's it like to sense yourself, what's it like to go slow and to feel yourself and to be exploratory and playful as opposed to having this orientation of trying to get it right.
Yeah.
And if the students are already a little bit more familiar with those ideas, then I can focus a little bit more on what is it in that specific lesson, whether it's a jaw lesson or a shoulder lesson or a breathing lesson. There's a little bit more specifics there.
Yeah. Room to explore the possibilities rather than talk about the essentials of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, they're really lucky to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So you've expanded out beyond musicians too. Tell us about your new project.
Yeah. So this year I've been working at Forest School, outdoor preschool, and I've done that before, but yeah, I've really been interested in child development along with that. And what I love is that all of these different interests that I have, they all have the same themes and they all have the same ideas. And one of the things about Feldenkrais that was really life-changing for me was the approach to learning. Like my approach to learning had always been, try hard, focus, grit your teeth, willpower your way through. And this idea of learning that's centered around play and exploration is totally different and feels so much better and also works a lot better. Like you get better results. And so I've been thinking about lots of different ways to play with kids and guide their learning in that, and guide also their relationship with themselves and each other and the world around them, which I think is also what Feldenkrais is about.
Yeah, I loved reading. I forget if it was an awareness through movement, probably, but he doesn't call it judgment. Nowadays we would talk about judgment, but he talks about how learning shuts down when we're in an evaluative environment, and anything is evaluative. Now we would say when there's any kind of judgment involved. But for so many of us, learning always comes with an evaluation. And I love the idea of outdoor preschool, of Feldenkrais informed teaching, neuromovement informed teaching, because it removes that impediment to learning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else are you doing?
I'm making plans to hopefully work in wilderness therapy over the summer.
Wow.
So that I'm very excited about, partly because it means I get to live in the woods. And also because I get to work with adolescents and young adults, helping them to navigate life. And I think somatics are huge in that. And I'm excited to be able to bring that in a little bit more. I'm still working on how to bring more Feldenkrais ideas into preschool, just because of their attention span, other than like the free play. But with adolescents and young adults, I'm excited to be able to do more kind of mindfulness stuff. And and to help them foster those like healthy relationships.
Yeah, and you mentioned the sense of self before. One thing I've begun to notice is that, of course, when people come to us with pain or discomfort, it's often because their map of their own body is not quite accurately representing how their body really is. And I won't speculate as to why, social media, but I feel like a lot of younger people are coming in with really distorted brain maps and really distorted views of their bodies. And I don't find out about it until later, right? Like they come in with pain and discomfort, but what's really going on is that since a very young age, they just started having these two different images, like their real body, the image of their body, and the implications are profound.
Yeah. Spending time outside is such an important thing for me.
Yes.
And the change that I noticed when I started getting into teaching forest school and doing nature connection was very similar to the transformation I experienced through Feldenkrais, of a
Yeah.
kind of deepening and increased sense of self and an efficacy, like a sense of efficacy and agency is huge.
Yeah.
With Feldenkrais, I started to realize these ideas like I'm stronger than I thought I was, or I can say no to things, or I can make my own decisions. And with nature connection too, and a lot of the idea behind wilderness therapy also is when you learn these survival skills and these wilderness skills and primitive skills, you're like, whoa, like I didn't know I could do that. That's really cool. I feel really powerful, as
Right.
opposed to feeling helpless and um,
Right.
you can't do anything.
And it's the process too, right? Because sure, you learn a skill, but you also start to build the confidence that I can figure things out for myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. And you also explored some ideas in permaculture, yes?
Yeah. So this past summer, so I've been into permaculture for a little while. A few years ago, I lived at an eco village in Bloomington, and we did permaculture there. And then this past summer, I did a program at the Eco Institute at Picard's Mountain, which is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And that was a program that combined permaculture and social change and earth skills and activism and living in community in this perfect package where I think going into the program, I wasn't exactly sure what it was or what it would be like, but I had a sense that like this is a place that's tying together all of the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
Some people have the permaculture piece, but not the activism piece, or they have the nature connection, but not the, and to not the somatics, and to combine all of those things in how can we care for ourselves and care for each other and care for the earth in this holistic way that recognizes the interconnection of all of those ideas was
And
big.
that's changed sort of how you talk about Feldenkrais too, I've noticed.
Yeah. Well, maybe tell me more about what you've observed in that.
Sure. So it was really great to see you on your way back from North Carolina, and you were lit up, just so excited about all the ideas. And then I sort of saw a transformation in your communications online about shifting from relating just to the self to relating to self and others and community and planet. It sort of became a bigger part of your messaging that what you're doing all falls under the umbrella of connection and social change.
Yeah, I think before that I was much more hesitant of what do I say and how do I present these ideas and how do I market it?
Yeah.
And there's something to that of how do you want to market these ideas? And also I know some people are turned off by ideas about spirituality and some people aren't really into the earth thing. And one of the really cool things I think about Feldenkrais is that there are no beliefs associated with it. You just do these silly little movements and then you feel better. And it changes the way, you see yourself and the world. And it doesn't require wearing anything or adopting new rituals or anything like that. And it doesn't even require talking about your feelings or talking about your past experiences. And I think all of this other stuff is what's come up for me and my ideas and my feelings and my applications of Feldenkrais.
Right.
But I was really hesitant to let people see that, and of how people would interpret that. And I think what's changed is just being more comfortable and confident with myself, of this is who I am. And if you want to do Feldenkrais a different way, great. And there are plenty of practitioners, and, find the practitioner that feels like a good fit for you.
Absolutely.
And I would rather be me and bring what I have to bring to the world, rather than trying to fit a specific prescribed model.
No, and that's wonderful, because we're all different and we all need different practitioners that we can relate to, because it is a very intimate connection, nervous system to nervous system, right there, moving bodies in space. And while it's all respectful and kosher, it is a very profound experience, and you need to feel connected to the person with whom you're working. And I know a lot of people identify with the messages that you're sharing with us now. So I'm glad you're enjoying expressing that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next?
I don't know. The wilderness therapy, and I'm going to keep teaching forest school, and of course I still have my private practice and see clients. I'm thinking about, as we come into warmer months and maybe the pandemic subsides a little bit, what it might be like to teach classes outside, or maybe teach classes that combine ideas more specifically. So like combining Feldenkrais and social change, or Feldenkrais and nature connection. And I'm also recognizing that I don't have to do everything all at once. That's something I've always been, I have lots of ideas and I feel like they all need to happen right now. And, just kind of playing things by ear and seeing how it goes is a new thing for me. So I'm working with that. And I remember one of the questions on your list what would you tell someone younger than you? And some good advice I got recently was follow the breadcrumbs. In that, like when I started Feldenkrais, or when I stumbled upon Feldenkrais, I had no idea where it would lead me, and I didn't have a goal with that. But once you start to go down the rabbit hole, you realize that there's so much else to learn and so much else to discover, and like following that sense of intuition of just, this feels good, or it feels like there's something important here, and letting it lead where it leads.
Following your nose.
Yeah, and I've met really great people that way, and discovered really interesting modalities and tools and worldviews.
Yeah. So if a 20-year-old asked you, so I'm thinking of trying some Feldenkrais or Rolfing or whatever it is in the world of somatics, what would you say to them besides, follow the breadcrumbs? What little tip would you have for them?
I think just try it out, because you don't know, you don't have to get into it thinking that this is going to be your career, or that this is the thing for you. Maybe you try Rolfing and then you discover you like Feldenkrais better, or you do Feldenkrais and it helps you a little bit, and then you realize that you're an amazing musician that you never thought you could be. I think it'll lead you somewhere important.
Yeah. Be open to the possibilities.
Yeah. And I think, we're all given this idea that when you're 17 years old, you choose what you want to do with your life. And then you study that in college and you pursue that career for the next 30, 40 years.
Right.
But how many people do you know that actually do that? Most people don't work in a field that's like remotely related to what they studied in college.
Or even if they have the same job 40 years later, it has shifted profoundly and they needed to be able to shift with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So be open to what might come up and where it might lead you. I love it.
And especially for these generations, the world's changing so much that to have the skills, then you can be adaptable, but you can't predict what's going to be needed and what kind of opportunities there will be. So I think adaptability is huge.
Adaptability. And I would add that one of the great things about Feldenkrais is that we talk about not having fixed goals, right? Because it's a process. And you mentioned it like indirectly, talking about nature school. It's all process oriented. And so talking about young people going out in the world, learn process. Don't learn outcome, learn process.
Yeah, that was a hugely reassuring thing for me when I started to study Feldenkrais, because I always had these ideas that I had to be super disciplined and I had to constantly be directing myself. And to realize that I could just come to class and do the lessons and that there was something in my nervous system that was going to figure it out without my conscious intention or willpower or anything, that I could just let myself be, and that, like, as humans, we're wired for growth, we're wired for efficiency, we're wired for learning. And so just knowing that I could come in and trust that process and not have to always be so vigilant about like watching over myself and directing myself made a huge difference. To trust the process.
Wonderful. Trust the process.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share before we sign off?
I think there was something that came up.
Take your time.
Maybe not. I think just knowing that our nervous systems are really intelligent, and the world around us, nature, is really intelligent, and there are processes going on that are much smarter than we are in our conscious thinking. I think that's
nothing big. We could invent is going to surpass what nature already designed for us.
Yeah.
Well, the wonderful thing about Facebook is that once we sign off, you can drop your links in the comments so people can find you. And if you remember what it was that came up, you can also put that in the comments.
Cool.
Yeah, but as always, it's such a pleasure to talk with you, to hear your ideas. I appreciate your joining me this morning, and I can't wait till we talk again.
Thank you.
Bye, Alex.
See ya.